Hello, Tampa Bay fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show, your online radio home for Tampa Bay sports talk and Rays postgame shows. Stay tuned throughout baseball season for live coverage after most Rays games with comprehensive coverage of all 162 games from April through October. Got something to say? We'd love to hear it. Give us a call, internationally toll-free. 877-566-1020 or send us a tweet at WHBC Official. Don't go anywhere. Tonight's program will be starting in just a couple of minutes.
HBC. The kid has arrived. It is a good evening to you and how you be. William Haynes here, you there, at 12:30 on this Tuesday morning. This William Haynes Show is live from the WHBC studio in Clearwater, Florida. Number to call the show is 877-566-1020 if you'd like to get on the line and talk Rays baseball. You can also drop us a line on Twitter at WHBC Official. Make sure to follow that account as well for all updates and links to the show when we go live. Of course, some big post-game shows upcoming this week. We've been pumping it up for about, a week, 2 weeks. This 3-game set in Tropicana Field against the Red Sox. It will take place in several hours tonight, officially, as we're now into Tuesday, 7:10. And as if the series against the Red Sox could not get any bigger, as Boston now has a half-game lead up on Tampa Bay for first in the American League East, which is the first that it's been that way in about a month after the Rays got a hold of it and on their hot streak from mid-May into mid-June. So that alone, there's enough there that's a huge midseason series. We're about 3 weeks away from the All-Star break. Mid-June. This is real, legitimate, regular season, pennant race style baseball. But you throw in a couple of other things. The 6-game losing streak that continued with Sunday afternoon's loss on Father's Day to the Seattle Mariners. It was 2-2 going into the 10th inning. Once again, the Rays failed to bring the runner at second base home with nobody out in the top of the frame, and it was Diego Castillo loading the bases and with 2 outs allowing a walk-off grand slam to the 9-hitter Shed Long to cap off, again, what was a 4-game sweep in Seattle. And the Rays are now 2-13 in T-Mobile Park in Seattle since the beginning of the 2016 season. They've been swept there every single series since 2016, aside from when they swept the Mariners in 2019. Outside of that, they've walked away with either a 3 or a 4-game sweep, as was the case finished Sunday afternoon, and then you count the 2 losses to the White Sox, and it's a 6-game losing streak, which is far and away the longest of the season. The only other one was from April 3rd through the 7th, which included a sweep in Fenway, but that was a 4-game losing streak. They're on a 6th one now. And as if that wasn't bad enough, 4 of those were in walk-off fashion, and with a 3 in extra innings, all in 10. And in none of those games, the Rays were able to score that runner from second base. And so, really, in more of an extreme fashion, we're getting back into that discussion about the ineptitude of this offense with runners in scoring position. So a team that had a really hot stretch, including where they had won 16 of 17 games, an 11-game winning streak, a loss, and then followed by a 5-game winning streak, and then they've been pretty much 3 wins, a loss, that kind of stuff. They've been winning a lot of series going into that series in the south side of Chicago against the White Sox. They were 7-0-2 in their previous 9 series, so they were unbeaten basically for an entire month in series play. They had a couple of splits, obviously, a 2-game set against the Nats, and a 4-game sweep in New York against the Yankees. But other than that, they had been winning every series that was on their schedule, and for a little while there, as you'll recall, they had the best record in the majors and had that, I think, when it was at its best, a 3-game lead over Boston in the AL East, and that's pretty much all gone now. As I said, they trail a half game of Boston for the AL East, and it's not like we're still, in April or early May, and we're still with the small sample size. No, like I'm trying to emphasize, this is midseason, summer, dog days type stuff, and not only that, with the losing streak, it's huge to get back on track, but also against the rival and maybe retake the lead in the division, all that. Then you throw in the call-up of the biggest prospect in baseball, probably the biggest prospect the sport has had in decades, in shortstop/third baseman Wander Franco. He's a 20-year-old switch hitter from the Dominican Republic. We've been talking about him for years. He signed with the Tampa Bay Rays organization as an international free agent in July of 2017. He was only 17 years old in his first season of professional baseball, and he was named the Appalachian League Player of the Year as a 17-year-old in rookie league ball, hitting .374, and really since then he has just been, the talk of the ball as far as, the MLB pipeline and the prospect rankings and things, and really for this stretch since maybe 2017, 2018, the Rays have been thought of as by far and away the best farm system in baseball, and headlined, of course, by Wander Franco. Going into the year, he was a spring training invite, and he had played quite frequently. Was not necessarily too impressive. He's been talked about as a guy that's got, an 80 grade arm out of a 20 to 80 scale, just in case you weren't aware, on his throwing arm, and is also very good with the glove and fielding. And we've heard all kinds of good stuff about that. But he's also considered the best hitting prospect, really since Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And what Vladdy Jr. right now is, I think, tied for the major league lead in home runs with. He's probably got 23 or 24 at this point. And again, we're 3 weeks shy of the All-Star break. So a guy that's going to hit plenty of 50, maybe even 60 homer seasons in his career if he continues along this trajectory. So Wander Franco is up there with those guys. But unlike Vladdy, he's much better defensively. He's got speed on the base paths. We talked about Arozarena last year when he was called up as a 5-tool prospect, and that's an old adage in inside baseball and those things. If you've kind of followed, they talk about it in the Moneyball movie and stuff. And when you are looking at prospects, the 5 tools, whether it's fielding, throwing, base running, hitting for average, and hitting for power. And as it goes, typically a player will maybe have 1, maybe 2 of those tools, and you can try and maybe develop a third. But then there's going to be guys like Wander Franco that have all 5. And like I just told you, his first year of pro ball in the United States, it's a 17-year-old. Appalachian League Player of the Year, hitting .374 with 11 home runs and 57 RBIs. In only 245 plate appearances for the Princeton Rays there. And he only took off from there into the 2019 season. At that time, he was ranked the 4th best prospect in minor league baseball. He began the season with the low A squad, the Bowling Green Hot Rods, and then was promoted to the high A ball, Charlotte Stone Crabs, on June 25th of 2019. And he finished the 19 season with, combined with the low and the high A level. He hit .327 with a .400 on-base percentage. He hit 9 home runs and 53 runs batted in. And going into the 2020 season, and this is, of course, before COVID, Going into spring training and things, he was a guy that was probably going to start at probably Double-A Montgomery and then maybe play there for half a season and then maybe finish up with Triple-A and then maybe even be, a September call-up depending on how things went. Of course, with COVID, shutting down the whole world in sports along with it, he was just another name on a long list of prospects that did not get to play, of course, with the entire minor league baseball season being canceled, and the major league season, of course, did not begin until the late summer in the final week of July. And so all minor leaguers could do last year was basically play in the alternate training site, which was in Port Charlotte, coincidentally enough, where he played the season prior, and was just doing that, staying, I guess, game ready, because I'm sure the Rays really wanted to try and develop some of the younger guys, but the main point of the ATS was just to keep guys ready in case, there was COVID issues, an outbreak, and a lot of guys had to be called up or with injuries, whatever. It was just to keep guys pretty much in playing shape. So by no means was he getting, real game-level minor league ball quality at-bats. It's more practice than it was games, as much as they tried to make it game-type situations. And then going into the 2021 season, there was, I don't think it was ever really considered by the Rays front office, but fans maybe discussing him making the opening day roster. But it was important to remember he turned 20 years old on March 1st of this year. So, is still a very, very young guy. And a note came out that he's the first MLB player to make his debut in the majors that was born in the year 2001, which, he's only a couple years older than me, which is really just blowing my mind to kind of think about it. But the minor league season was delayed this year into about early to mid-May. Usually it starts a couple weeks after the major season, in April. So it was pushed off a little bit. So he did play with, the big league club in spring training this year and got plenty of playing time, whether it was at shortstop, and I think it only played a game or two at third base, so it looked like he was really tracking along that shortstop route. But his at-bats did not look great. He had struck out a lot more, at least than what they had kind of built him up to be. A guy that throughout his minor league career has a much higher number of walks than he does strikeouts, to give you an idea of how good his batting eye is, and he really does everything well. And as we've talked about with guys like Taylor Walls and Francisco Mejia, the fact that he's a switch hitter means that he's always getting that advantage and every time he steps up to the plate. And that I would imagine the stat that has the greatest impact on would maybe be the walk rate, just because you are seeing the better side of the pitches every single at bat. So did struggle a little bit, but spring training really throw it out the window. For most of it, pitchers are throwing only fastballs, and you're seeing a different pitcher every time. It is not indicative really of the game of baseball, but it's what for a lot of guys it's all we have to go off, depending the time of year and things like that. He did hit I think in Port Charlotte it was almost a 500-foot home run that went over the offices in right field. Really got a hold of a pitch, and I believe it was a slider too, and he had just really gotten a hold of it. And that was probably his apex up until now when he received the big league call-up. And in 39 games with Durham this year, Wander Franco hit .315 with a .367 on base and a .586 slugging, which competes to about a .950 OPS, which is absolutely terrific and well above average. And in 39 games, hit 7 home runs and 35 runs batted in. In his 39 games, he spent 28 of them at shortstop and played a handful of games between second and third base. So, as has been the case, I guess, all along on the track for Franco, he was going to be a shortstop. And even though they're no longer on the same team, his name will, I think, at least in Rays circles, be connected with the name of Willy Adames, because I think their futures were connected together. Until Willie was traded earlier this month to the Milwaukee Brewers. At least what I was putting out there was that Adames would probably stay at shortstop and Wander Franco would move from shortstop, where he had been playing over to third base, and you get kind of a Derek Jeter, Alex Rodriguez situation where two true shortstops, but the veteran guy that has been there stays at shortstop, and the newbie, the newcomer moves over to the hot corner at third base, and they can coexist. I thought that would be the case for at least a little bit. Never in my wildest dreams did I think Willy Adames would have been traded, well before the call-up of Franco. I thought, if anything, Adames would have departed a little bit after, kind of like in 2018 when Willie got called up. He had played a couple of games in May, then got sent back down, and then came, I believe, back in July. And then I think, at the end of August, they traded a Danny Hechavarria, who previously was the everyday shortstop. So that, you don't put the pressure on the guy, the prospect to have to play every day. If he goes through a slump, you can send him back down and still have a veteran guy that you trust there. But I think the Rays found a good trade partner in Milwaukee for Adames. It had come out that Milwaukee had been calling about Willie since the end of the World Series last year, so a guy that they had their eyes on for quite a while, and so and it appears right now that the Rays got a pretty decent haul back in return with as good as Willie has looked since going over to the Brewers, and the pitchers J.P. Fireeisen and Drew Rasmussen, who, by the way, Rasmussen, at least for right now, gets sent down to AAA Durham after making one appearance with the big league club. So Wander can be called up, and they will have to put Wander on the 40-man roster, and they're going to need a 40-man spot, so they're going to have to send someone down, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But with Wander, I think the time was right. With the team playing well, there was no real incentive to bring him up. You didn't really need to, and, as the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it seemed that the Rays were more than content to keep him at the AAA level as well as he was playing. But I don't want to really speak this out over him, but as a broadcaster, it's of course my duty to throw this out. I mean, if he does struggle at the big league level, during this initial call-up, one thing that people are going to point to, and rightfully so, was his quick jump up through the ranks at the minor league level. Of course, in 2019, really only played half a season with the High A club. Missed all of 2020. I mean, he was playing at the alternate training site, but no real games. And he goes from half a season at High A to the AAA level Durham Bulls in the AAA East, which is, I think, considered the more difficult of the two. Generally speaking, I'm not quite sure how much that bears out, but either way, the highest level of minor league baseball. He didn't play in AA at all. And it's not like he had a full season of High A either. I mean, really, had played just a couple months with the High A Stone Crabs and then straight up to AAA, and really didn't play there for that long, only playing 39 games. So the fact that he's looked at this good at AAA has really responded to it. I believe he had like a 12 or 13 game hitting streak with the Durham Bulls as well. So is really going into this major league call-up hitting hot. And then you look at what's not so hot, and it's the Rays offense in the month of June. This month, the Rays are hitting a slash line, a 222 average, only a 300 on base, and a 361 slugging percentage, which ranks 25th out of 30 teams in the big league. So the fact that they've even been winning as much as they have is, if anything, a testament to the pitching. So, as I said, when they were winning and the team was scoring a lot of runs, and especially Taylor Walls was playing well at shortstop, and they had everything going fine, there was no incentive to call Wander up, and you can continue to have him on that timeline that he was probably on going into the season, which was, let's just see how he responds to this big leap in play, because AAA is a long way from the Stone Crabs, no doubt. In competition, and so if he struggles a little bit, we'll give him the season. Maybe he's a September call-up. Even if he plays well and we don't need him, maybe we wait until August, September, whatever. Instead, a team that was once really hot and had the best record in the big leagues, they have fallen a little bit. I mean, they're only a half game back of the Red Sox, as we've continued to say, and are probably only 2 or 3 games back in the major league standings. So it's, and there's still 13 games over 500, but this team is in desperate need of some juice, and the 6-game losing streak, of course, a testament to that. This team has yet to win a game since Tyler Glasnow went down with the injury, and I think that's still a dark cloud looming over this team, for one, especially until they can get back in the win column, and two, until we even get a full diagnosis of what's going on. We knew that it was a partial UCL tear, and there was a tendon issue as well, I believe. And so we knew that at least it wasn't a full UCL tear, so Tommy John is not going to be guaranteed to be necessary, but all they can do is shut him down and have him really reevaluated. We're talking about Tyler Glasnow, the starting pitcher, the ace of the Rays staff. So a lot of uncertainty going on there, and with the team playing as well as poor as they are, there was a desperate calling for something like this, and thankfully the Rays had Wander Franco basically in their back pocket, ready to pull out at any time when they needed it, maybe get some buzz. And I think they were very strategic in waiting for the first game of a homestand and a big series as well to call him up. Not saying that's why they did it, but as they always say in the front office, there's a lot of things that go into every decision. You got to look at every angle, every facet of what goes into a move like this. And as the team is headed into not this homestand but the next, going full capacity, 25,000 at the Trop, maybe give that some juice, as of course Rays fans have been calling for Franco for quite a while, and I'm sure they're eager to get a real legitimate guy every day at shortstop. Not that maybe they haven't found that in Taylor Walls, but I think if you ask anybody, something has gone horribly wrong if Wander Franco is not the everyday shortstop, by maybe 2022 or even 2023 for that matter, but more likely next year, considering he's already been called up. So a long way to say this move, I think, was very timely. I'm not going to argue with it. We had the conversation when the Nationals were here a couple weeks ago, and Juan Soto was here, and he's 22 years old now, but in 2019, in that World Series run that the Washington Nationals had, Juan Soto was a call-up at 19 years old, so I think he is very comparable to Wander Franco, and that's why we had the discussion at that time. And he's an example of a guy that really hit the ground running, and he ended up, being the cleanup hitter, for the Nats in the World Series. So was a really crucial part of their success. I think he had a home run in Game 6 or Game 7. I know he, carrying the bat down to first base, that was a big deal, and that's really how he made his name, and he's long been considered, the next Ted Williams, as a pure hitter. And you look at maybe the other side of the coin and prospects that get called up pretty early, and Jared Kelenic of the Seattle Mariners, a guy that came over in the trade from the Mets when they sent Edwin Diaz over there to the Big Apple, and they got the Mets' best prospect, and Kelenic right now the number 4 prospect in baseball. Made his MLB debut on May 13th of this year, and really struggled. He went, I think in his first 82 at-bats, he was hitting something like .098, and with, I want to say, 40-something strikeouts. Just looked really bad at the plate. It was clear he was not ready, but with the Mariners, there was some ulterior motive stuff going on. There was talk that they were manipulating his service time, and they had fired a front office guy for some inappropriate comments that he had made during the offseason. And so the fact that he was the guy that was keeping Kelenic down, and they brought in a new guy, the Mariners were put in a bad spot where they had to call him up pretty much, even if he wasn't ready. But, it's by all indications he was. But this, it's not always going to happen on the first try. A guy these guys could end up being Hall of Fame players, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be a Hall of Fame guy the minute they're brought up to the big leagues. It is a process. It is going to take time. And Franco obviously is going to struggle. He's not going to, if he plays the rest of the year with a big league club, which is not a guarantee, he may only play, a couple games. And depending on how things go, they may shuffle the roster back around if Brasso gets called up, or they want to bring Rasmussen back up if a pitcher goes down, something like that. He may not stay, kind of like Willie Adames. He played a couple of games in May. They sent him back down. He came back up in July of 2018. So you never know. But I can tell you, in however many games he plays this year with a big league club, I feel comfortable in saying he's not going to have more walks than strikeouts, and he's probably not going to be a 300 hitter and things like that. So, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that's not the player he will eventually be. It just means that at 20 years old, he's not there yet. The guy cannot even buy a beer yet. When Wander Franco, the day he was born, March 1st of 2001, Rays starting pitcher Rich Hill was 10 days away from being 21 years old. Just to give you an idea, pretty much twice as much age difference. Rich Hill 41 years old, Wander Franco 20. Rich Hill is old enough to be Wander Franco's dad, which is it's just very, very strange when you look at it, and I love stuff like that just to kind of put it in perspective. So I'm highly anticipating this debut. I will be going to the game tomorrow at the Trop against the Red Sox. I probably would have bought tickets anyway if I didn't already have them once the news came out, but I had bought them in a pre-sale a few weeks ago. So talk about timing, working out, and I'll have pretty decent seats to the 200 level. So definitely make sure to stay tuned to at WHBC Official on Twitter, for all the pictures, and I'll of course be taking video and things like that. This is a really big day in Rays baseball. You look at not just for the Rays, but the most anticipated debuts in MLB history for the Rays. Probably the two biggest, both in 2008, Evan Longoria and then David Price, and those ended up being cornerstones of that franchise's run from really 2008 into 2011 and I think even into 2013 when I think David Price got traded the next year in 14. So for that Joe Madden run from 08 to 13, those were really, if you had to say, the two cornerstones, of course. Evan Longoria being a guy that would hit 290 and hit 25, 30 home runs, and David Price, a guy who won the Cy Young Award, I believe, in 2012. And so those would probably be the two biggest for the Rays, and Wander Franco, I think, might even best those two. Hard to say. I mean, it's all about semantics, really, if you're having that discussion. But just for the point of having it, I would argue that Franco would be a bigger deal in his debut than Evan Longoria. But that was only because Longoria just really came on strong and took the league by storm. I don't think anyone had even anticipated him being as good as he ended up being. It would be impossible to have higher expectations for a player than what's on the shoulders of Wander Franco right now. So hard to say that he's going to live up to it, but like I said, there's the expectation that he's going to be a Gold Glove level shortstop, that he's going to be a Vladdy Jr. level power hitter with home runs, and power numbers, that he's going to be a 300 hitter or close to it, have more walks than strikeouts, is going to steal 25, 30 bases a year, all those things, which, it's probably impossible for a guy to check all those boxes. You're talking about a guy that's up there, with a Mike Trout type level, and really it's impossible to say at 20 years old if that's what Franco will end up being, but we'll get a little bit of a taste of what's potentially to come tomorrow night. But other big call-ups in MLB history that Wander Franco's name will be on the list: Vladdy Jr., April of 2019, Ronald Acuna Jr., April of 18, Shohei Ohtani, March of 2018. Maybe you go back a little further. It's certainly a big deal, and this is a good comparison as well that might be worth looking into, is Bryce Harper in April of 2012. He had a double in Dodger Stadium, and that was I recall that game, or at least looking back on it, that was a big deal for him. And Bryce Harper was a guy that was, as a high schooler, was considered, the biggest prospect in baseball. So probably the closest comp to Wander Franco as you could get. Going back a little bit further than that, we talked about David Price and Longoria with the Rays. Ichiro Suzuki with the Mariners in 2001. A-Rod with the Mariners in 94. And maybe another one would be Ken Griffey Jr. with Seattle in April of 89. So a lot of Seattle players on that list, funny enough. But just to give you a taste of a not just, the level of expectations on Franco, because, and we really should be excited. It should not really be a daunting thing, but that the Rays are expected to have a player at that level, at A-Rod's level, Ken Griffey Jr., Acuna, Harper, Vladdy Jr., the names we just read off, but that for all of time, Franco will at least, as a young prospect, be on the list of those names as one of the biggest call-ups in Major League Baseball history. So we will be witnessing history in front of our eyes, whether you're watching on TV, listening on the radio, or anyone fortunate enough to get to go to the game. And I'm sure that Red Sox series, there was going to be maybe 12, 13, 14,000 fans. We may be getting more closer to 20,000 during the week, the work week, which would be pretty exciting to see, and I at least hope that's the case. And really cannot express how excited I am to see this kid play. And as if really this season wasn't big enough, going into yesterday's game against the Mariners, 43-29 in the first 72-73 games or so. That was tied for the best start in that many games in franchise history. They had matched that mark in 08 when they won the pennant, in 2010 when they went to the playoffs, and in 2019 when they went to the playoffs as well. So they're on track to be another one of those teams. There's been argument, and I think for good reason, that this squad is up with some of the best in Rays history, and you could argue the very best maybe this franchise has ever had. And you add in Wander Franco into this mix, and I think that really makes it even more exciting, and it's going to be one heck of a ride, and I think really puts us all in under the spotlight, at least initially. And I'll probably have better numbers on the show, and I did check before the show tonight. I have been getting an increase in listenership, so I look forward to that continuing and maybe even getting a little bit better. And we are thankful for everyone who's tuning into the program as always, and hope to always every night make it the best show it can possibly be. And like I said, the Rays, a franchise that not just in baseball but in sports are so often overlooked despite being up there with the best, might finally potentially be getting some of the attention they deserve. And I think this could potentially undo the bad vibes caused by the Glasnow injury and get this turned in the right direction, because there's no doubt that the feeling that not just I got, and that I can personally attest to when I saw the news, and that I know that how you felt when you heard the news that Franco was getting called up, completely erased, and then some, the feelings of the 6-game losing streak. It's like it was completely washed away, like it never happened. And it's, how good you feel about the team right now with him being up here. So, again, I know I've said it 1,000 times, and we'll take a break here and kind of reset the conversation, but cannot say how excited I am, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this show, a rare show during the season on an off day. But I think this is such big news, and one of the biggest days in Rays history, period. Whether you look at, of course, some of the playoff games, anything, and this will be part of the conversation with the stadium talks, and is the team moving, is it not? We'll finish with this note, and then we'll head to break. It's funny enough that we were just in Seattle playing the Mariners, but if you haven't already watched it, by the way, definitely go and do this right after we're finished with the show this week, whatever. Sports Blog Nation, they did I think an 8-hour total kind of documentary on the history of the Seattle Mariners, and I think there are a lot of parallels with that franchise to Tampa Bay's. And the Mariners were a franchise for quite a while. Going into the 95 season, they had never made the playoffs. During that season, there was legislation going on in the city of Seattle as to whether there was going to be funds directed to a new stadium. If there were not, the team was probably going to move out of the city for the second time, and all that stuff. And the Mariners made the playoffs that year. They had to play a tiebreaker game to get the division, because I think there was only one wild card spot at that time. Or that was the first year of it, I believe. And so they had to win the division to make the playoffs. Went all the way down to the wire, and thanks to their terrific team run that the team went on, the attendance numbers were up, and at the end of the year, the legislation, the city senate, whatever, they voted in favor of securing funds for the new stadium, and that's the park that they're playing in actually today in T-Mobile Park, moving over from the far outdated Kingdome that was literally falling apart. The tiles in the ceiling were coming down like during the season. That's how old it was, and of course, there's comparisons to be drawn there to the Kingdome from the Trop and all that stuff. But the point I'm trying to make is that the buzz around that team at that time, because something good was happening, allowed the team to stay there. It allowed them to secure funds for the new stadium, and really, that was in 1995. The rest was history. They have they had the longest playoff drought in professional sports, North American pro sports. But yet they're a top 10 team, top 15 team in attendance every year. And I think Tampa Bay really could be the same way. We really won't know if it's the location or the stadium that's causing the attendance problems until we get a new stadium, if we're fortunate enough to have that happen. But Wander Franco being added into this mix could be a part of that equation to get the buzz back into baseball in this city. And I think, and I'm not predicting this by any means because, like I said, it's all up in the air. But looking back, just like with the Mariners, this could be the move that was made, yesterday. That could be, the turning point in maybe securing baseball in the city, like I said. So, and I don't unintentionally I add to the pressure on this young man's shoulders as if there wasn't already enough, but at the same time, I think he has such potential that he could even live up to that billing. So, with that being said, on a hyperbole-laden show tonight, I don't think I've ever really gotten this bad with the hyperbole, but we're going to take a short break. When we return, we will wrap up our discussion, maybe look a little bit smaller picture as opposed to big picture on what this means for the roster and the moves. Wrap up our discussion quickly because we did miss the Sunday afternoon loss to the Mariners, and then we will preview not just tomorrow's contest against the Red Sox, but we'll take a quick overview on all three of the games in this crucial set to go on this week at Tropicana Field. So still, as much as this show has been a blast, a lot of good conversation still to come. During the break, you can call the program at 877-566-1020. You can also tweet us your thoughts at WHBC Official. Make sure to drop us a line there as well and follow that page, of course, as well for all updates on the show. But with that being said, finally, we're going to take the break. We'll be back in a couple minutes. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, Rays fans, William will be right back. We're in a commercial break, so don't touch that dial. Remember, you can call us internationally toll-free at 877-566-1020 or tweet us your thoughts at WHBC Official. Also, we'd like you to stay tuned for William's other podcasting projects at speaker.com/user/WHBC.
HBC. And at 1:07 on this early, Tuesday morning, we return on the William Haynes Show. Again, number to call the program is 877-566-1020. You can also tweet us your thoughts at WHBC Stream. Still to come, talking about the roster and how maybe that will change and how it could change in the future with the call-up of one Wander Franco, and then also still to come our preview and our discussion of this week's 3-game set against the Boston Red Sox. But right now what we have to talk about, and we'll try and make it brief because it is not good news, but of course you probably saw it already on Father's Day yesterday afternoon in Seattle to cap off a 4-game set. It was the Mariners finishing their sweep of the Rays, which they have done quite frequently over the past few seasons, by a 6-2 final score in 10 innings. So it was 2-2, and of course a grand slam in the bottom of the 10th for the 9-man shed long off of Diego Castillo. That made it 6 straight losses in a row for Tampa Bay, 4 of which were in walk-off fashion. So you talk about an all-time slump. That's about as bad as it gets. And depending on how soon they get rid of this extra inning rule, which I don't know, I kind of like it as much as it has gone against the Rays. The Tampa Bay this season is, I think, now 3-9 record in extra innings, and for a team that's 43-30 now, that's a pretty low mark in any type of split in extra inning games, and it's really just because of the offensive ineptitude. Of course, it's completely different without the runner on second base, and maybe these games go for 15 or 16 innings, and that's why I like the rule, is because there's no reason. And myself, I sit down, watch every game, score it, all that stuff. I don't want to sit for 4 or 5 hours and watch a game when I've got another tomorrow to watch and the day after, etc. So I like the rule. I think it's good to keep the game short and move the season along, because there is 162 games, and you can bellyache about a game all you want. But further, and I'm not saying this to criticize him. JP Fireeisen came out on Twitter with his distaste of the extra innings rule, because of course he came in the bottom of the 10th in a tie game with that runner on second base, and the very first pitch that he threw, which of course adds to the frustration, it was just a fastball down the middle, and Mitch Haniger singled off of it for a walk-off win. But that's Tampa Bay's own fault. You don't want to put your pitcher in that situation, then score the runner from second base with no outs. And it was the same frustration yesterday for the Rays. It was Zunino was the extra inning runner. They pinch run Kiermaier for him. So a base hit, any base hit, easily scores Kiermaier from second base pretty much. But with no outs, I think if anything, just bunt him over. You don't even have to bunt. If you have a guy that's not comfortable with bunting, okay, fine. Just hit it to the other side between first and second base in the infield to try and move the baseball, move the runner. And they had the perfect guy, really, I thought, to be in that situation, Joey Wendell, a guy that when he's hitting ground balls is typically to the pull side, which as a left-handed hitter is between first and second base. Is a guy that grounds out to first base up there with anyone right now, not named, Yandy Diaz or, Austin Meadows, whatever. We've got a lot of guys that ground out to first base right now, unfortunately. But Wendell, a guy that in that situation, that's what you would actually want. But unfortunately, like Saturday, that was not able to happen. He ended up flying out to right. They were pitching him down and in fastballs, which is typically his swing and miss pitch, but he was kind of fouling him off and whatnot. And just got, I think, a slider or a changeup in the air for a fly out. Kiermaier's not able to move over. And the 9-man Phillips comes up, and he had not looked right at the plate pretty much all day, and he just pops it up for out number 2. So they can't move the runner over with 2 outs, goes back to the top of the order. And Manuel Margot, who with a double and a walk in that game, had extended his on-base streak to what now? I think it's 12 games. So maybe get that Tommy Pham level streak going that he had carrying into the early 2019 season, I recall, for Pham. And a testament to, I guess, a pretty decent run that Margot has been on, and his average is almost up to 240. So he's got it up about maybe 20, 30 points over the last 2 weeks' worth of games. So Margot has certainly has done himself a favor in that regard. But with 2 outs and KK at second base, he just grounds out to the pitcher. And in that situation, obviously, you need to get the ball in play, but needed down for a base hit and was not able to come through in that situation. But getting on base twice already in the game, he had done his fair share. And if Wendell could have gotten him to third base, then you're talking about a sac fly situation for Phillips. Excuse me. And then, and if that's not the case, then, Margot driving him in. But neither of those were able to capitalize. And similar to the day prior, where they went to the top of the order in the 10th, and that was Randy and Choi getting retired there. And so, once again, you go into the bottom of the 10th with no runs scored. So you put your pitcher in that bad situation, that he's got no breathing room. He's immediately coming into, a high leverage situation type jam. And if I didn't already say, they go to Diego Castillo. They'd already used Thompson, Springs, and Fairbanks in that game. Obviously, they weren't going to go back to JP, Matt Whistler, etc. in that spot. They had Rasmussen, but he had pitched an inning and 2/3, so probably was not good to go on a back-to-back. So I don't argue. Unlike the day before, I think they should have gone to Thompson instead of JP, but Diego was probably the best man to go yesterday, and just a rough spot. There was a couple of, the first batter that he faced, Dylan Moore, a fielder's choice, I think ended up being a bunt down the third baseline, and Castillo ranges over to his right to pick up the baseball. Instead of just getting the out at first and allowing the runner to advance to third base, he just throws to third base and tries to get the runner out there. The guy was almost already there. It was Taylor Trammell. He was pretty much at third base by the time the ball left Castillo's hands, but you can understand, especially seeing what happened yesterday and a couple other times during this losing streak, you have to press a little bit if your offense puts you in this position. So it was the wrong move to make, but I don't blame Castillo for doing it because, again, what else is he to do? You get the out at first, and then you put yourself in a sac fly situation, and then you're talking legitimately no room to breathe whatsoever, even a bunt situation, whatever, anything to bring the runner in. So I don't blame him for trying to get the lead runner there. And then there was another situation, a fielder's choice for Bowers, and they actually do get the runner at third base and a rundown, but it ends up being runners at the corners anyway. Then, or it was actually at second and third rather, with one out, so still get into that sag fly situation. Then they walk Luis Torrens, who had hit a home run in that game, to load the bases up. You do get Jake Fraley to fly out in an unproductive out. And then it was Shed Long hitting the home run with the bases juiced to hit a walk-off grand slam. And again, that capped off the 4-game sweep in Seattle. 6 straight losses, 4 of which in walk-offs. The last time we say it, I promise. But the good in this game, some of the pitching, Shane McClanahan, definitely his best start to date. And I think I certainly anticipated that, and certainly some Rays fans probably could see that coming as well. Just a rough stretch. Of course, that 3-inning start against the Nationals went fastball heavy, gave up a couple of home runs off of the pitch, then goes his next time out in Chicago against one of the best lineups in the American League against the White Sox, and then throws like 80% sliders, it looked like. Did not trust the fastball. You get, singles the other way on the slider. So going into the start, we had talked about the key was finding a happy medium for McClanahan, and he did just that. He pitched like he was supposed to do. Trusted his fastball early in counts. It was playing 97, 98, 99. Touched triple digits a handful of times, including late in the game, or late in his start rather, and much less of the slider. And the slider had different movement. In the Chicago start, it was kind of playing like the Yarbrough changeup, where it moves but doesn't really dip and dive, kind of like a sharp breaking pitch. Sunday against the Mariners, it had more clean-cut break to it. So I think it was just a matter of McClanahan's stuff was significantly better than his last time out, and it definitely showed. And then dropped the curveball much more than he had his last time out. I imagine he probably just didn't even have a feel for the pitch against Chicago and had it spinning today. So, a fastball at 98, 99, a slider that at times would be high 80s, but threw it a couple times for like 92, 93. So that's reminiscent of that Glasnow slider. And then dropped a couple of breaking ball curveballs in the low 80s. And he was buckling guys, had a career high mark, 8 strikeouts over 6 innings, allowed just 1 run on 3 hits. It was a solo home run to Luis Torrens. Checking real quick what that pitch was on. Led off the 3rd inning, 4-12 to center. It was on the first pitch a fastball for Torrens that was up and away, and just went with a pitch. So 94, that was probably a slider, I would imagine, because typically he doesn't throw fastballs that slow, so maybe it came up wrong. But and outside of that, really was pretty good. He had a leadoff walk in the 2nd, erased by a double play ball, another single in the 3rd, and then a leadoff single in the 5th to Jake Bowers. But that was about it. And like I said, with the 3 hits over 6, looked really good and only walked 1. Again, all the stuff was playing. The deepest he had gone into a start, I think 86 pitches is a career-high mark, and the 6 innings certainly a career-high mark as well. We had talked about the Rays. It looked like they wanted to keep McClanahan on a 5 innings, 70, 75 pitch limit to try and keep him healthy throughout the season, because, of course, they only drafted him a couple years ago out of USF, so has not played a ton of minor league ball, is not used to kind of this long, everyday season type of thing. To try and keep him healthy throughout the season. But with Glass now going down, there's going to be a lot more innings suddenly that need to get covered by a lot more guys, and everyone's going to have to step up. So McClanahan, I think the Rays just kind of are throwing all caution to the wind. They've got plenty of depth at AAA, whether it's Luis Patino, Brent Honeywell, even Drew Rasmussen, and they've got other guys down there as well. Chris Archer will be coming. We hope at some point this season, it looks like, post All-Star break, he'll start throwing stuff, maybe in games again, but you're going to have to stretch him all the way back out. So they can afford to be more aggressive with McClanahan because of the depth that they have, and I think that will ultimately end up being the right decision. This was the first start that I look back, and I am convinced I can have buy-in on Shane McClanahan as a big league pitcher in 2021. Just showed like he had a lot of growing pains against Chicago. And I had long been contending was not ready for this. But today I see this, when his stuff was playing and the sequencing was much better. By the way, please, and I was saying this when we were previewing the game, and Kevin Cash, a big league catcher, you would think would understand this, and he probably does. Of course, he's forgotten more baseball than I'll ever know, as the old saying goes. But Shane McClanahan is significantly better with Mike Zunino catching him, not just to secure the corner strikes that Z does much better, but just the sequencing, putting the signals down, all that stuff. Z is great at keeping the pitchers comfortable and can kind of work them out of jams at times. Mejia, it seems like it's not as much of that. He could end up being a decent ball player. He's a good hitter, but I don't think has yet mastered the nuances of that position that Z, as a veteran, has down. His last 2 starts for Shane against the Nats and the White Sox, where he looked bad, straight up bad, and went slider heavy against the White Sox, those were both with Mejia catching him. And then the fact that he has his best career start with Zunino behind the plate, that's no coincidence, and I think it should continue that Z should catch him. In the day of, there's no personal catchers, I say feh to that, and just let Shane go with Z, because at this point it's proven that it works, because he's had quite a few starts at this point. I think at least maybe 10 this season or close to that number. So I look forward to seeing his next time out. There's going to be no one that replaces Glass as the ace, but there are guys that are going to have to try and come close, whether that's going to be Shane, Yarbrough, even Rich Hill, although we will see him on Wednesday, but I think he's probably on the downturn and is going to end up being more of a 5-inning guy like Walker. So Yarbs and Shane are the guys that are going to have that upside, and Shane is the only guy that has quite the stuff that Glass has, the 100-mile-an-hour fastball and some great breaking pitches. So that's too much pressure to put on McClanahan to be a Glasnow-esque guy, but 6 innings of 1 run, only 86 pitches when he gets fully stretched out, that would have been, a 7-inning start probably. Seeing more of that stuff would be awesome. And he's not going to have the feel for his stuff as he did today every time out. Like they said, you start 33 games in a season, 11 times you feel great, 11 times you feel so-so, 11 times you don't have your stuff at all, you feel horrible, and you have to gut through it. So this isn't going to happen every time, but we got a glimpse into and potentially his future and the kind of pitcher that he can be, and that was probably the only bright side of the game. A couple doubles, and really the only other big deal was Margot extending his on-base streak to 12 games after what Arena's 12-game hitting streak was snapped a couple days ago, so Margot still has his streak going. And again, he's got his average, like we said, up to 250. And a guy, like we said, the best RBI man on the team. In a situation with men on base, that's the guy that I feel most comfortable with at the plate, all of that. So it's great to see that's transferring over to some other stuff, and he's having a lot of success working some walks and stuff as well, obviously, that it's on base and not just a pure hitting streak. And with that, we transition over to what we have left to discuss, the series against Boston, and we'll be on the air all this week, but just touch on all three of the games. With Wander Franco getting called up, the Rays had to send someone down for the 26th man, and they select to do Drew Rasmussen for that. I don't necessarily understand that. Maybe first up, first down type of thing. First hired, or last hired, first fired type of thing, as I was looking for. But he looked great. He faced 5 batters, struck 4 of them out, and retired all of them for an inning and 2/3 clean on Saturday night, and played. His stuff was playing. 98, 99 fastball, sharp slider, low, looked fantastic, and he'll be back up soon and pitched 10 plus scoreless innings in Durham already this year, but maybe they want to stretch him out to be a starter. I could definitely see that this was kind of a tryout for him, and they want to maybe focus on stretching him out. That could be the case because they don't really need a 2 or 3 inning guy because they already have Colin McHugh for that. But we'll just have to kind of wait and see on that. But kind of like Mike Brasso, just because he's getting sent down, that's not a permanent thing. It's going to fluctuate a lot. And in case you didn't know, just a reminder, minor league options, it's not how many times you send them down. Like, you can only send them down an extra amount of times. It's the amount of days they spend down in the minors. And if they spend so many days in a season, then they use up an option year. And you can only use up 1 per season. So, they could use up an option year on them if they want to. And they may not even do that. So they can bring them up 100 times. They could send them up and down every day if they wanted to, but it's just about how many days he spends down there that counts. So don't be alarmed by the Durham shuttle. It doesn't necessarily affect minor league options like you may be led to believe, or just preconceived notions, whatever. So Wander Franco comes up, Drew Rasmussen down. I think you want to look at bigger picture the next couple weeks. If Franco, maybe this week, because I think they'll give him maybe 3 to 5 games to see what he's got, and then they can go from there, because it's not like he's covering for an injury like I think Willie did in 2018, where he played a couple games. Coincidentally, made his major league debut at home against the Red Sox, so that's another thing I just realized. Funny kind of coincidence back in the mix there. To kind of give his audition, if he is playing well, Taylor Wallace is probably the guy that gets sent down, because the infield is already full, and they're adding another guy into the mix. This is why they traded Adames. This is why they sent Brasso down, because they didn't have any more room on the infield. So they're already they're going to be in a one-man surplus with Franco. Someone in the infield is going to have to get sent down or maybe moved, whatever. But I'd imagine Taylor Wallace gets sent down. He's done nothing wrong, really. I think has looked great defensively. I don't even know if Franco is going to be as good defensively as Walsey, but obviously the offensive upside is probably much greater. Wallace, who's 24, 25, that might be frustrating for him to get sent back down, but it's just a matter of circumstance, I think. And long-term, Walls is probably the third baseman of the team, because Wendell is 30 years old and I think is only under contract through this season. So, looking down the line, and of course Vidal Brujan and all those guys to be called up as well. If not this year, then at the beginning of next. The kids will be making their way up, so by no means is Walls out of this thing if he gets sent down. But to make room for Franco, if he doesn't pass the test after maybe 3 to 5 games, maybe they give him the homestand, 3 against Boston, 3 against LA, before they head on the road. You have him comfortable at home, whatever. If he doesn't look good, send him back down. It's not really a big deal. Maybe be careful with it. I mean, the Mariners gave Kalenic almost 100 at-bats. I'm not sure if the Rays exactly want to do that right now when they're in kind of a pennant race type situation. The Mariners, at least at that time, certainly were not. But then I think really they send him down and everything is as normal. Walls as the shortstop, Wendell third base, Choi and Yandy at first, whatever, and you continue along that path. But I could be wrong, but that's to me how I see them kind of playing that situation out. And they are going to have to make a 40-man roster move because I was wrong. I thought Wander was already on the 40-man, but he was not. I guess they didn't have to put him on yet for the Rule 5 draft or anything. So they're going to have to move someone, whatever, because on the 40-man, you can't send anyone down. You have to designate them for assignment once you put them on. And to me, a couple of pitchers, either they would DFA Lewis Head or Sean Poppin. Lewis Head we've seen at the big league level a couple of times. Sean Poppin we've only seen in spring training, and I don't really know much about him, but that reason alone, I think he would be the odd man out because everyone else is high-level prospects and guys in the big league roster. So probably Sean Poppin, but maybe Lewis Head. Again, it's going to be probably one or the other, unless there's someone that they want to trade. But at this point, 13 games above 500, who are you really making a move for? I'm not buying that they're making a move for a starting pitcher. I just don't think it's feasible. That's why I haven't given that much airtime, and we haven't gotten any calls on it either. So probably they just move one of those guys, designate them for assignment, whatever. If no one wants them in a trade, then they just get cut and they'll go through waivers, whatever. So now moving on to the series against the Red Sox later tonight. So now we're 1:30 on this Tuesday morning, 7:10 tonight. It is the Red Sox at 43-29 and the Rays at 43-30. So the Sox a half game up. This season, looking at the team stats, the Red Sox as a team are hitting .258. In comparison, the Rays are hitting .229, which is not very good, and are hitting, I think, as we said, are hitting .222 in the month of June, which is not much lower than their season average, but that's because they were so bad in April and early May as well. So they've only had about a 3-week stretch where they were playing really good ball. About the same amount of runs scored, though, even with 30-point average differential. So maybe the Red Sox even worse with runners in scoring position than we are, if you can imagine. The home run numbers are just about the same, 91 for Boston, 87 for Tampa Bay this year. Only a 4-point difference in on base, 318 for the Sox, 314 for us. The pitching is certainly much better. The Rays give up about one less run per game than the Sox. The Red Sox team ERA is 4.24. The Rays is 3.38. The Sox have walked more than us, 253 compared to 198. Strikeout numbers are about the same, about 700 for both. The Rays' opponent's batting average is about 40 points lower, 224 compared to 262. So the pitching, no matter what you want to look at, is much, much better for Tampa Bay. And the offensive numbers outside of average are about the same as well. Looking at how these two teams are trending, you know how the Rays are going. They had that terrific stretch mid-May to mid-June, but that run is certainly over as they have lost 6 straight, 4 in walk-off fashion, 3 of them in extra innings. These two teams faced off in early April 5th through the 7th, and it was a sweep by the Sox in Boston. A lot of things have changed since then, almost everything, to be quite honest with you, and I don't think that's indicative of how these 3 games are going to go this week. So the Rays are on the downturn, but of course with the call-up of the best prospect in baseball, Wander Franco, there's no doubt that the team is going to have a jolt of energy and some juice going. So as much as momentum could be going in the wrong direction, I think they're going to come out, like I said, with high energy, and they'll be pumped up to play. The Red Sox, over their last 5 games, are 3-2. They just came off of a series loss to the Royals in Kansas City, 2-1 fashion. Before that, they had a 2-game sweep of the Braves in Atlanta. They split a 4-game set against the Blue Jays, and then before that, they had dropped a couple series to the Astros and a sweep of the Yankees in there as well. So a little bit up, a little bit down. They seem to be doing pretty good against the not-so-good teams, and they struggle against some of the better ones. So maybe that leads you to believe that they won't have such an easy time here at the Trop this week, and I certainly hope that would be the case. So the Sox coming off a series loss, the Rays coming off a 6-game losing streak. Neither are necessarily trending in the right direction, although if you had to pick, the Red Sox certainly in better shape, and they are, worth noting, a half game above the Rays in the American League East standings. Game 1, and we'll go here in depth now. Tonight, 7:10, Rays and Sox. It'll be at the lefty Eduardo Rodriguez going for the Boston Red Sox, and for the Rays, they're going to go with the opener, Andrew Kittredge to start, followed by Ryan Yarbrough. So it appears that Ryan Yarbrough is not going to be made a full-time starter, at least not yet. I don't think that's probably the right move, but the bullpen is in fine shape, so it ultimately, I don't think, makes too much of a difference right now one way or the other. We'll start with the Rays first. Andrew Kittredge this year is 5-1 with a 134 earned run average, so surprisingly, one of the Rays' better relievers, the 31-year-old right-hander, has started 2 games this season and none lately. Started on April 14th in New York against the Yankees, and started in Anaheim on May 5th, where you gave up 2 innings scoreless. And both of those starts were ahead of Ryan Yarbrough, so it seems like that's a tandem that they're comfortable working. In the game against the Yankees, it was an inning and 2/3. Yarbs followed with 5, and then on May 5th against the Angels, he started with 2. Yarbrough followed with 4. So you'd led to believe that would continue. Kit for probably 2, and then Yarbs for 4 or 5. So that is going to get you into the 6th or 7th inning, depending on how you want to play things, and that's how I would imagine things continuing to go. For the Red Sox, their starting pitcher, the southpaw, 28 years old, Eduardo Rodriguez this season, has a 5-4 record with a 621 earned run average, so he's not having a particularly good season, and is probably having his worst month of the year to date, as in the month of June, over 3 starts, is pitching to an 8.36 ERA, which is certainly not good at all, and about 2 runs lower than his season average. His last time out in Atlanta against the Braves, although they won both of those, did the Red Sox, he gave up 4 runs over 4 innings on 6 hits and a walk. Fanned 8 on 80 pitches. And then looking at that game, just to see kind of scouting report, he is a low 90s kind of fastball, but mixes them all up. He's got a 4-seam, a cutter, and a sinker, all playing at about 89 to 93. And then he's got a changeup and a slider off of that, so some breaking balls too. But not a high velo guy. I know the Rays struggled against Marco Gonzalez quite a bit on Sunday when he went 6 1/3, 2 runs. So kind of a similar guy, if I had to say, and again from the left-handed side, which the Rays have been pretty good against as of late as far as record. I think they were, 10-3 over the last 13, at least going into the Seattle series, and that's obviously changed a little bit. Also of note, for Eduardo Rodriguez, missed all of last season. He opted out because of a heart issue. I think he was with the team when, the summer training, spring training 2.0, whatever you want to call it, and he got tested for a heart condition, and they found out he had it. And, of course, that would put him at a high risk for COVID if he was to contract it, and that would cause health issues. So, of course, he made the right decision to opt out of the year, but worth noting because that's a big deal. Guys that missed all last year of baseball and are not coming back, it seems, at least guys that we know, it hasn't seemed to affect Colin McHugh too much. He opted out last year with the Red Sox as well with a shoulder injury, and has pitched pretty darn well for the Rays this year. Eduardo Rodriguez, the same, although hasn't been pitching as well. Again, a 6.21 earned run average, an 8.36 ERA in the month of June. But it seems like he's at least returned to somewhat normal. He's had a couple of decent starts, 7 innings, 3 runs against the Mariners, 6 innings and 2 runs against the Blue Jays, and that's really about it. And both of those were in April, so it seems like he might already be getting worn down a little bit, and they're trying to kind of manage his pitch count in that way as well. So hopefully, for Tampa Bay's sake, he'll be poised for another fairly short start here later tonight. And we don't have any guarantee. We know Franco is going to be activated to the active roster tomorrow, but obviously there's no guarantee that he starts the game. You would think, connecting the dots to look at, everything that the Rays social media has done, come see the Wander Franco debut tomorrow, buy tickets here, and all the videos of him getting called up. I don't think you do that just to have him sit on the bench the first game. Like, if you weren't going to have him play today against the lefty Rodriguez, then wait the next day to call him up. I don't understand why they would do that and then not play him. Maybe to have him come off the bench. And the Rays understand this. In a 162-game season, the strategy, I think, you throw that out the window just for a second. Just think about, again, up there with the names of Ken Griffey Jr., Bryce Harper, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., as far as cachet with the Major League debut. Give him the justice and the dignity of just starting the game outright, and he can come out with a starting lineup and all that stuff. So just my explanation of why I believe he'll probably start tomorrow against the lefty. He's a switch hitter, so we'll become a little bit more familiar with his lefty-righty splits, not just against the pitchers, but from both sides of the plate as well, which, I guess will be the same once he plays a little bit at the big league level. And with Durham this year, Franco has batted in the second place in the order pretty much every lineup card that I saw of him, and he's played mostly at shortstop and a little bit at third and a little bit less at second base. So not that that's indicative of what he's going to do. I have no idea. He could hit cleanup. He could hit fifth or sixth. He could hit leadoff. I really don't know. We're going to have to wait and see on that. But imagine that he'll be starting at shortstop, so maybe the lineup tomorrow against the lefty would be probably Arozarena in left, Kiermaier in center, Manuel Margot in right, and then in the infield, they can either go. It depends if they want Choi in the lineup or not. If they want Choi in the lineup, it would be Yandy at third and Choi at first. If they don't want Choi in the lineup, then it would be Yandy at first and Wendell at third, and then of course Franco at shortstop and Lau at second base. That feels really weird to put Franco in that lineup prediction. And then probably gives Z the... Well, he did have the day off yesterday. So, put him back in the starting lineup unless they want to do Mejia, because Zunino did play a day game after a night game. So off day aside, maybe they want to give him 2 days rest. So maybe put Mejia in there. And then the DH, they could either go Choi if he's not in the lineup, but that doesn't seem likely, or they would go with Austin Meadows, I would imagine. And again, with Franco putting that in the mix, I have no idea kind of how the batting order is going to lie. We're just going to have to kind of wait and see where he falls into line there. And then for the pitching side, just following past history, Kittredge probably for 2, and then Yarbrough for 4 or for 5, so that gets you either through 6 or through 7. And then they'll have the A-pen lined up how they want, of course, with the off day on Monday. So they can go Fairbanks, Castillo, Fireisen, Fairbanks, whatever. Thompson mixed in there as well. They can mix and match however they like, and I think we'll have the flexibility to do so. I would imagine in front of a raucous Rays crowd and everything, the Rays will probably end up winning and getting off the schneid. That'll be my prediction. We'll be on the air after the game as well. I'll be at the game, so we're not going to be able to be live right after the game. Probably Neil Solon's post-game show will end before mine begins, but obviously make sure to stay tuned to all my stuff to get the show when it's live, and I know it will definitely be buzzing. Even if it's a little bit of late show, no matter what happens, a lot of people are going to want to be talking about the game. And then, of course, we'll be on the air during the series, so we'll preview the next 2 games as we go. But Wednesday's game is going to be Garrett Richards against Rich Hill, and neither of these pitchers saw the opponent this season. Garrett Richards didn't start against the Rays this year, nor did Hill against the Sox. And then Thursday, the finale, I'll be at that one as well. It's going to be the righty Nick Pivetta against the righty Michael Wacha. By the way, Richards this year 4-4 with a 4.36 earned run average, the right-hander. Nick Pivetta, another righty, 6-3 with a 4.36 ERA. So overall, two kind of average starters. Pivetta did start against the Rays in the series in April, went 5 innings scoreless. But the theme with all three of the starters for the Sox this series, they are all having the worst month of the year so far. They're all having horrible months of June. So obviously the Rays would like for that to continue. So in a time in Rays baseball where there's a lot to discuss, we certainly look forward to this series against Boston. Again, we'll be on the air sometime after the game tomorrow. Stay tuned on Twitter at WHBC Official. If you're following us on there already, you'll know the link goes there immediately when the show goes live, so you can catch us from wire to wire. You can also follow the show on the show page where you're listening to it right now on Spreaker.com and just subscribe to us on there. Thanks to everyone for tuning in to the Rays Reddit page and on the Rays Discord. I put the links on there as well. The listenership is up. I know it's going to continue to go up with Franco. It's an exciting time to be a Rays fan. Big series against the Sox coming up. Hopefully they win tomorrow. We'll talk to you then.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC.
News.